A soldier's greatest fear isn't the enemy in front of him, it's the one he cannot see. But they're wrong. The greatest fear is the enemy you've already invited into your barracks. The one you've sworn to protect with your life, only to realize they were the ones holding the knife to your back the whole time. My name is Christopher Adams. I spent 20 years in the United States Special Operations Command. I've led men through the shadows of the Hindu Kush and received medals for bravery that I usually keep locked in a velvet-lined box in my study. I was trained to survive the harshest environments on Earth, to read a battlefield in seconds, and to never, ever leave a man behind. But nothing in my decades of service, no tactical briefing or combat survival course, prepared me for the war that was being waged inside the four walls of my own home. I remember the day I returned from my final deployment. The air in the terminal was thick with the scent of jet fuel and reunions. I was in my dress blues, the silver star pinned to my chest, feeling the weight of a long career finally coming to a rest. When I saw Isabella standing there, her eyes shimmering like the Mediterranean, I thought I was finally safe. I thought the battlefield was behind me. Isabella Taylor was the woman who had written me letters during every blackout, the woman whose photo was tucked into the Kevlar vest over my heart. She was my peace. My civilian sanctuary. For the first few months, life was a dream. We lived in a stunning estate overlooking the Potomac, a house that felt more like a fortress of luxury. I had transitioned into a high-level security consultancy firm, partnering with my oldest friend from the academy, Benjamin Turner. Ben was a brother in arms. We had bled in the same dirt and shared the same canteen. He was the kind of man you trust with your life, and I did. I gave him the keys to my business and the trust of my family. But a soldier's intuition is a haunting thing. It's a prickle on the back of your neck when the silence is just a little too quiet. It started during our formal dinners. I noticed the way Benjamin's eyes would linger on Isabella a second too long, or the way Isabella would suddenly fall silent whenever I walked into the room while she was on the phone. In the military, we call it atmospherics. You feel the shift in the environment before you see the threat. I began to notice small discrepancies in our firm's logistics. Supplies diverted, federal contracts delayed, signatures that didn't quite match my own. I wanted to believe it was just reentry stress. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was looking for a war where there was only peace. But the discipline that made me a colonel wouldn't let me sleep. I started observing my own home like it was a target objective. I watched the way they interacted when they thought I was distracted by my memoirs. The laughter was too forced. The glances were too heavy. My home, my sanctuary, was beginning to feel like occupied territory. I was a decorated commander, a man who had outmaneuvered insurgents and navigated complex geopolitical landscapes, yet I was becoming a stranger in my own life. The medals on my wall started to feel like mockery. What good is a silver star for valor if you can't even protect the sanctity of your own marriage? I didn't know it yet, but the breach had already occurred. The perimeter was gone. And the two people I would have died for were currently planning my total destruction. The realization didn't come in a flash of light, it came in the cold, analytical darkness of a tactical breakdown. I had used my military connections to run a private background check on some of our firm's recent offshore investments. What I found was a systematic assassination of my reputation and my finances. Benjamin Turner wasn't just my partner, he was a traitor. He was using our federal security clearances to funnel classified logistics data to private bidders, and he was using Isabella to do it. I found the evidence hidden in a secure server Benjamin thought I didn't know how to access. There were transcripts, messages between them that were so intimate they felt like physical blows. They weren't just stealing money, they were mocking my bravery. Benjamin joked about how easy it was to slip past the great commander. Isabella spoke about me as if I were a ghost, a relic of a violent past that she was ready to bury. My heart didn't just break, it was shattered into a million jagged shards of ice. I felt a coldness settle into my bones that I hadn't felt since a winter extraction in the mountains of Tora Bora. The heartbreak was a different kind of pain. In combat, pain has a purpose. Here, it was just hollow. I watched Isabella at breakfast, watching her pour coffee with the same hands that had typed messages to Benjamin about how they would leave me with nothing but my medals and a mountain of debt. I felt a roar of rage in my chest, the warrior spirit, screaming for a confrontation. But my command experience took over. In a crisis, you don't react, you respond. You stabilize the situation, you gather intelligence, and you choose the terrain for the final engagement. I began to live a double life. By day, I was the loyal partner and the loving husband. I sat in boardrooms with Benjamin, discussing our brotherhood and our shared future, while secretly documenting every federal crime he committed. I listened to Isabella talk about our upcoming anniversary trip, knowing she was actually planning to use that time to disappear with him to a non-extradition country. The struggle was internal. Every time I touched her, I felt like a traitor to myself. Every time I shook Benjamin's hand, I felt the blood of our shared history turning to poison. I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way I never had on a battlefield. But as the weeks passed, the pain hardened into a strategic resolve. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a commander on a mission. I started moving the pieces. I reached out to my old contacts in intelligence and the Department of Justice. I didn't want a divorce. I wanted a court-martial of the soul. I watched them get bolder. They thought they had successfully jammed my radar. They started moving larger sums of money, thinking my military mind was too rigid to see the nuances of white-collar crime. They underestimated me. They saw the uniform, but they forgot the man who earned it. They forgot that a commander's greatest strength isn't his weapon, it's his patience. I prepared the battlefield. I made sure every wire transfer was logged, every secret meeting recorded, and every betrayal documented with the precision of a high-altitude drone strike. I was waiting for the perfect moment to initiate the final phase. The end didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened at my retirement gala. It was a room filled with high-ranking officers, federal officials, and the elite of Washington. Isabella was by my side, draped in diamonds bought with the very money she had helped steal. Benjamin stood at the podium, ready to give a toast to my distinguished service. To Christopher Adams, Benjamin said, raising a crystal flute of champagne. A man of honor, a man of loyalty, and a man who always knows who his friends are. I stood up, but I didn't raise my glass. I walked to the front of the room and signaled the technician at the back. Before we toast, I said, my voice echoing with the authority of a parade ground, I'd like to share a different kind of after-action report. The giant screens behind us, meant to show a montage of my military career, suddenly flickered. But it wasn't photos of me in uniform. It was the logs of their secret bank accounts. It was the transcripts of their messages. It was high-definition footage of their secret rendezvous in Benjamin's penthouse. The room went silent, the kind of silence that precedes an explosion. Isabella's face drained of color, her social mask disintegrating in front of the very people she spent years trying to impress. Benjamin's glass shattered on the floor. In the military, we have a word for what you've done, I said, looking Benjamin dead in the eye. It's called treason. You didn't just betray a friend, you compromised federal contracts and stole from the men and women who serve this country. As if on cue, the back doors of the ballroom opened. Federal agents moved in with a precision that I had helped coordinate. They weren't there for a celebration. They were there for an extraction. As the handcuffs clicked around Benjamin's wrists, I turned to Isabella. She was shaking, her eyes darting around the room, looking for an exit that didn't exist. You said I was a ghost, Isabella. I whispered so only she could hear. But ghosts have a way of haunting the people who tried to kill them. The aftermath was total. Because of the federal nature of the contracts they compromised, there were no easy outs. Benjamin Turner is now serving a sentence in a maximum security facility, his brotherhood replaced by a cell block. Isabella lost everything, The house, the status, the luxury. She was left with the one thing she hated most, her own reflection. I sat in my study a month later, looking at my medals. The house was quiet, the silence no longer heavy with lies but light with the truth. I realized that revenge isn't about the fire, it's about the clearing that remains after the fire has burned out. I had lost the life I thought I had, but I had regained my honor. The moral of my story is simple: you can take a soldier out of the war, but you can never take the war out of the soldier. Loyalty is a sacred bond, and when you break it, you invite a reckoning that no amount of money or charm can outrun. I am Christopher Adams. I have survived the enemy abroad, and I have defeated the enemy within. I am at peace now, not because the war is over, but because I finally know who is standing beside me in the trenches. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Your support means everything and motivates us to bring you more powerful stories. Drop a comment below and tell us which part of the story you like the most. And stay tuned, the next story is coming soon, even more intense and emotional.